Yes, team. Welcome to another episode of the Total Mental Performance Podcast. Today we have a very, very cool dude, Corey Holmes. We used to live with each other in the same building. He was in the apartment down on the same floor. We used to bump each other in the reception, out on the pool, and I just always found Corey really interesting. And I invited him onto the podcast. I actually didn't do my homework, and when I did my homework and looked at his resume, that's actually even cooler than I thought. He's built, scaled, and sold multiple businesses. He's raised monies from funds such as Accel, Seed Camp, Sequoia, and 20VC. He built Viceroy Group to $20 million in sales and then sold it. And he's achieved financial freedom, and he now helps others to do the same. And Corey, like I said to you earlier, I was like, oh, I knew you were a cool dude. I didn't realize you were that much of a cool dude.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
That was an impressive intro, so thank you.
Yeah. So talk to me. Where did this all start? Where did business start for you?
Business, I think, for me, it goes back to like childhood. So like I started buying and selling bikes on Craigslist. That was probably the very early days of like my entrepreneurial journey.
Where was home?
Yeah, that was back in Vancouver Island, in Canada. Yeah.
And then what happened? Tell me more about that.
So that, I think it really started. My dad bought me a mountain bike. I loved mountain biking, and he bought me a bike for my birthday. But what I found is like I love mountain biking. It's tons of fun and stuff. But I actually enjoyed like learning about bikes and then buying and selling them. And so that kind of got me going. I did that for probably from when I was like 12 years old all the way to like 18. And I would just buy and sell these different bikes and did all types of stuff. And I think so. Like my family, we moved a ton growing up. Every 6 to 12 months we would move. My dad was a business consultant, so we were just always moving between Canada, the States, lived in Mexico, all over. And so it created a lot of like instability and insecurity in my life, and I ended up not actually graduating high school. I only made it to grade 10, so didn't make it very far. And I think I always would look at like entrepreneurs that I looked up to and just saw these people like there was no barrier in terms of what they could do. There was nothing they couldn't do. There was no one saying, oh, you don't have this credential, or you don't have this, or whatever, which is like, no, I want to do this. This is what I'm going to do. And I love that. So like later on, when I was about 21, I had gotten into a university. And so I'd done like some tests and whatever, because I'm like, you know what, I should probably just like get in university. Everyone else was doing it. Like, why not? And so I got into university. I was going to get a business degree, had moved out. I was all ready to go. And a week before class started, I got a phone call saying, hey, like this business just shut down on the island. Are you interested? Like they're selling all their stuff. And basically, if you want to start a business, you can. And I remember sitting there that night. I'm like, I just signed up for school. I'm going to university. And I thought about it that night. And then in the morning, I said, you know what? I'm not going to go to school. I'm going to drop out of university, and I'm going to go start a business. Instead of go to university and learn how to start a business and learn about business, I'm just going to go do it.
What was the business?
So it was a car wash.
Cool.
Yeah. So it was a car wash, and so I moved back, called the university, said, hey, I'm not going to be there. I got my $5,000 back from that and used that $5,000 to start the business. And I knew nothing. It was an auto and marine detailing business, which is basically, fancy word for car wash. But I knew nothing. I didn't even know what detailing was. I knew nothing about anything. But I always remember Richard Branson. He has this book called "Screw It, Let's Just Do It," and that came to mind when I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to figure it out. I have no idea what I'm doing, but it was the best decision of my life.
And what did you learn in that?
Oh, everything. Everything from just like how to set up a business, how to lease a building, how to attract customers, everything from, and then I think one of the biggest things is like initially going into it, there's this misconception with entrepreneurship or I would say business owners in general, is that there's a difference between people who are self-employed and people who are business owners. And a lot of people I speak to, they have a business, but they're actually just self-employed. And that was a big learning curve in that business. Is that when I initially started it, it was, I'm basically just created a job for myself. Show up at 9, clean cars all day, go home at like 8 o'clock, and do it over and over again. And then I read a book called The E-Myth, and that really made me realize what I was doing wrong. I was just working in the business, and I was just constantly exhausted. I'm like fried every single night, and I wasn't actually working on the business, which is what you should be doing. So that was a huge eye opener for me, and that was a big shift halfway kind of through the business.
Then what happened with that business, and then what did you do next?
So that business, I ran it for just over a year, and then I sold the business. About 2 or 3 weeks after that, I moved to Uganda to start a nutraceutical company. And
Was that another screw it, let's do it?
Pretty much everything I've done is a screw it, let's do it. I think I always say, like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I think because of the upbringing that I came, just like having that instability and having to change schools all the time and always make new friends, was really comfortable with change and really comfortable with just the unknown. So that was another time where it's like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I can figure it out. And we started that business. I started that business with my dad. So I moved to Uganda. A few months later, he moved down, and we ran that for several years.
What was it doing?
So that business, it was immune booster supplements. So we made products that people would take with antiretrovirals. So it was a lot for like HIV and AIDS patients. So it was all government contracts and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
So after that, I ran that for about 3 years, and then I sold my portion of that business and moved back to Vancouver. I had been dating my girlfriend at the time, long distance for 3 years, and she was sick of it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to move back to Canada. So we moved back. I moved back. We got married. And this was, when I moved back, I knew I wanted something different. So I'd done a car wash business. I'd done this nutraceutical business in East Africa, and we kind of scaled all over the place. But one of the things was when I was running this company in Uganda, we had a tech team that I was overseeing that would build all of our software and stuff like that. And it was super frustrating because here I am, I was 23 years old. I knew nothing about software. I didn't understand what they were doing, and like things weren't working out. It just made me really, really frustrated. So when I went back to Canada, I told myself, I'm going to learn how to code. I need to know how to build software. I really knew I was really loved computers and wanted to move in that direction. So I tried to teach myself for 3 months. That was an epic fail of trying to learn. That was the learning curve when it comes to coding, at least for me, was very challenging. So I joined a coding boot camp, did that for 3 months, and then eventually got an internship. And so that was kind of like my shift really from more like service-based business and product-based over to software.
And software is such a fascinating business because it's not real. It's all perceived value. Like you can't, with this table, you can see, right, there is a table. I will see value from here. Whereas when it comes to software, none of it exists. So you went down the product route. So you started learning how to create product, ship code. So then what happens?
So after that, I did the internship. I think about 9 months into the internship, I realized I don't actually want to be a software engineer. Like I don't actually like coding. I love coding, but I don't really want to be an engineer. So I got a job at Shopify, and it was kind of
Which year was that?
That would have been, I think it was around 2016 or 2017, and my wife had she had gotten a job at Shopify, and I'm like, I heard great things about it, and I said, okay, why don't I go work here?
And that wasn't even in the enterprise space back then. That was when it was in the real startup space, if I remember correct.
Yeah, it was very small. I think at the time it was under 1,000 people. Now it's way over 10,000. It was really, really small, very small. So when I applied, and I was sitting there, I was kind of like, I don't know, what am I even going to do here? I don't want to be an engineer. So what I kind of did, and I don't know if this was a good idea, I just applied for the lowest role in the entire company. I'm like, I'm just going to apply at this one, and to see if I can get into the company. And I got called. They called me back, and they basically said, "Hey, you're overqualified for this role, but like here's a whole bunch of roles, and you can just pick the one you want." And again,
nice.
It's awesome because it was very early stage Shopify, so they were just like, "Hey, what do you pick a job and you can have it." So did that. Did a whole bunch of things I worked on with a bunch of different large brands. I worked with like Logan Paul, Live Nation, bodybuilding.com. So that was a lot of fun.
So were you on the commercial and partnership side and sales side, or were you more on the product side?
It was on the so it was like on the merchant. It's called merchant success and launch. So helping people launch on Shopify.
Got it.
And so did that, and then did a few other roles with like with the governments. I did a bunch of stuff with governments and things like that. But after a few years of being at Shopify, I mean, amazing company, absolutely loved it. But my wife and I were just like, hey, this is, where's this going to go? We need to do something else. And so we told ourselves, you know what, we really want to go traveling. Like we would love to like create content and like travel the world. So why don't we do this? And so we did. We just basically one night said, hey, you know, this is not taking us where we want to go. This isn't the life we actually want to build. This, you know, we're making good money. We have a great life, but like something's got to change. So we decided to start this brand called Leave Comfort. It's just like, hey, we're gonna leave. Let's leave everything we got and go do this. So we basically that day sent our notice in, quit. Shortly after, and 30 days later, we had a one-way ticket over to Taiwan.
Taiwan.
Yeah.
Wow. So then you're now traveling and you're doing the travel content thing.
Yeah. So initially the idea was, okay, let's just travel around, create content. We'll just like vlog and do all this stuff. And we did that. And I realized, you know, this isn't a business like this. We had no social media presence either. Like I had never picked up a camera in my entire life, basically. I'd never created content. I'd never done any of this stuff. I was just like, hey, this is cool. And this is what I want to do with my life. But a few months into that, I realized, what's the business model? Like, what is this thing, and what are we going to do with it? And then we came up with this idea where we said, hey, what are the problems that we have? We have no social media presence. We can't like, you know, do brand deals because we have nothing to give and stuff like that. So we came up with this idea of, hey, we travel around all these different countries. We stay at these really nice 5-star resorts. We'll come to your resort and we'll basically analyze what you're doing really, really well, what you could improve on, and then maybe give you some ideas for other ways that you can improve the guest stay. So we came up with this concept. I threw up a landing page that day, just kind of grabbed some photos that we had and just put something together and sent an email to every single 5-star resort that I could see in the area. And basically within like 2 days, we were booked back to back.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. And what was so interesting is, you know, we were going into this with like a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, okay, we have no idea what we're doing. Like, we've never done this before.
Screw it, let's do it.
Yeah. And so we went in, and what we found is a lot of the people who run these resorts, the owners work in the resort and so on. But we would talk to them, and I said, like, why did you reach out to us? Like, you know, we have no social media presence. Like, we have nothing. And they're like, that report card thing that you were talking about is actually what we wanted. I thought that was so interesting because I'd never really heard anyone doing it, and we just kind of made it up. But they're like, that is actually what we want. We want to understand how we can improve and what you actually think we're doing well. And it was weird stuff. It would be like we'd go into a room, and if the newspaper hadn't been ironed, you know, that's a way they can improve. Where you go in, a lot of these really nice resorts, they'll give you welcome drinks. The really nice ones will prepare the welcome drink in front of you, and you can see everything happening. The ones that could improve, you know, just pre-made, just pull it out of the fridge, and here you go. So we did that. But it very quickly became a realization that, hey, this again isn't something I want to do with my life.
You create another job.
Yeah. It's so what we had done is we'd gone back for a wedding, and it was like the first time we had a break, and again we were sitting there like, do we want to do this for the next like 5 years? Because when you look at like business and stuff, things take a lot of time. And I think people underestimate how much time and effort actually goes into building a business. And so we were sitting there and we said, hey, you know, do we want to continue this? And the answer was no. It was up at, we would have to get up at like 4 or 5 in the morning. We had to get up before the sun so we could get the sunset shots and do all this stuff and be editing till midnight. And it was just like a nonstop thing. So we said, hey, let's not do this anymore. And we said, let's change it up. So after that, we moved back, and this is when we talk about like a 360. We basically moved back to Vancouver, back to the same city we had just come from, into the same apartment that we had just left, right. And I got a job back at Shopify.
Yeah. I was like, all right, round 2.
Restart. Click the restart button and do it again. So yeah, we basically did, and I think the thing too, I joke about this now, but when you're really in these things and you're making these decisions of, you know, I don't want to do this. It's not as simple as you just saying, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. It's all the other thoughts that come into play. It's all you're thinking about all your friends. What are my family going to think? I just quit my job.
It's fear of judgment.
Yeah, I just flew across the world and said I was going to do this. And, you know, this isn't actually, I realized that this isn't what I want to do. So I say these things like it's like was so easy of like, let's just switch it up and change it. But in reality, like there's so much emotional turmoil that goes on every time you make these changes. And it's not really easy, but making that decision was huge because once we made the decision, we moved back, got to the same apartment, got a job again, within a couple months, we started this other business on the side. And that completely changed like a huge, huge part of my life.
Yeah. Before we go into that business, I'm really curious because I've had a couple of businesses before, TMP and Kieran O'Neill Consulting and what I do now. But there's always this part of you, I don't know if you experienced this, but I've seen this with many entrepreneurs where it's like, am I giving up? Am I bitching out? Is it just because I'm finding this hard? And for me, when I'm speaking to clients, it's helping them understand what's the difference between quitting and moving on. Because there's a big difference between quitting and moving on. Quitting is you found it hard, you couldn't hack it, and you didn't really want it enough to go out and find a way for whatever reason. Moving on is realizing, actually, you know what, I've run a good experiment. I've realized the hypothesis has just been disproven. And actually the direction of what my life and the way in which I want to live and what I want to do just isn't aligned. And moving on actually takes more guts than quitting, believe it or not. But that fear of judgment that you spoke about is often the thing that keeps people trapped within businesses when actually they need to move on. So I guess a question I have is, for you, how do you recognize the difference between quitting because it's hard and moving on because it's not the right thing?
Mm-hmm. When you were saying that, it reminds me of there's a book called The Dip by Seth Godin. It's a short, like 70-page book. And
they're my favorite kind of books.
Yeah, I love it because you could read it in a day. It's so quick. I think it comes down to the questions that you're asking yourselves. Like, one is like, why did you start that business in the first place? But a lot of times I think when it comes to business, it goes back to when I say people really underestimate how hard it is to build a business. I think this is where you ask yourself is, are you looking to pivot or change because you think, hey, something else is easier, or there's like a cooler idea that you think can make more money? Or is it because you gave it all you did and you realize, hey, it's not working, the market doesn't want this, like I just need to change it up and move on. I think being real honest with yourself, and the reason I say that is because I've mentioned a few businesses I've done, but I did a whole bunch more, and they didn't go anywhere. Yeah. And a lot of those businesses was chasing shiny object syndrome. It was start a business, and I get the example I'll give is because I've done, let's say, physical products, services, software, digital products, whatever. Everyone always thinks that there's like the best way. Everyone's always asking, what's the best business to start, or what should I do? And it's like,
it depends.
It depends. Yeah. If way I look at it, if you start an agency and you're maybe like a digital marketing agency or whatever, it's really easy to start. Capital costs basically nothing to get it up and running. You can do the stuff yourself, and you can scale pretty quickly. The whole business is reliant on you continuously getting more clients coming in. And the only way to scale is by hiring more people. You're always constrained by people. It becomes
a management game and KPIs and yeah.
That's it. And if you start, same thing if you start a service-based business, it's always reliant on people. If you start a software business, you can make a lot of money, you can scale indefinitely, but the cost to build software is extremely costly, and you need a lot of resources oftentimes to build software nowadays. So like whenever I look at this stuff, when people are like, oh, should I start an e-commerce business or drop shipping or this or that? And it's like, but why are you actually wanting to do this in the first place? I think people don't really they don't really dive into like why you're wanting to do this.
Without a doubt. And even at corporate exec level, I had the CEO of a bank telling me, yeah, I've come into this bank and I'm going to change this whole thing and I'm going to do this. And I said, right, how long is it going to take? 3 years. And I said, okay, you've just come from one of the biggest banks in the world to this smaller bank to go and pull that off. Why do you want to do that? And he goes, what? He goes, why? And the reason he was speaking to me was because he'd had an executive coach for the last 12 months. He didn't feel like he was getting anywhere. And he goes, no one's asked me that. And I said, well, why not? And he goes, I don't know. I just took this role. I didn't really think about it. I said, okay, well, now you're in this role and now you've got a big team and he's actually doubling his team year on year in terms of team size. I'm like, but what do you get out of that? And until we start with why and we can begin with the end in mind, only then do I believe you should start a business, whether that's a self-employed business, a lifestyle business, or whether that is a performance company where you're looking to go, right, let's really try and take over our market. But until you start with why, until you begin with the end in mind, it's almost a lot of guessing. I think a lot of entrepreneurs get started out of ego, out of insecurity, out of scarcity, out of I want to prove that I'm enough, I want to prove that I'm worthy. Others are more the artists where they don't even see like the status, the acclaim, the money. They're just like, I want to create some cool shit and let me see what I can do. Until you can unconsciously realize, well, why am I doing this? What's the point? What do I get out of this? Often people fall into businesses, and it is like the most hard, difficult vocation that you can. It's complex, it's ugly, there's blood, there's guts, you get kicked in the nuts left, right, and center all the time. People try and steal your ideas, or it's just an ugly
ending.
thing. Yeah. So I think you're totally right. Before you start any business, like, why do you want to do that?
Yeah, well, and if you've read the book by Mark Manson, there's a quote in there, The Subtle Art. It's solving problems creates problems.
Yeah.
It's never ending.
Yeah.
And it's like, whether you're trying to decide, should you start a business, should you not start a business, what business should you start? And then even when I talk to entrepreneurs and they're running businesses, oftentimes there's this idea that if I just solve X,
the silver bullet,
boom, done. Everything's gonna be fine. And it's like, no, you're gonna fix that issue. And then because maybe it's like, I have no time to do anything. I need to hire people. If I just make enough money to hire people, then
that'll solve everything.
Yeah. And then you realize
I've got to manage these people.
It's like managing a team. Exactly. Yeah. No, it's and another thing that came to mind when you were speaking was, I think that there's a myth around what entrepreneurship is. And so often I see entrepreneurship, or, build a business, be your business owner, sold as a solution to people's problems. And I always tell people, if entrepreneurship was sold based on the reality of being an entrepreneur,
no one would take that job.
No one would take it.
Yeah, no one would take that job.
But hey, you hate your job. You have a 9-to-5. You have no freedom. Like, you don't make enough money. These are all complaints and problems that people have. And entrepreneurship, unfortunately, is sold as a solution to those problems, when in reality, I don't believe it is.
Well, I mean, hey, Corey, so you're in a 9-to-5 and you hate your job. Well, I want you to work for less money, and I want you to work 9 till 9, and I want you to be worried about whether you can pay the bills next month or not. And I want you to take on a lot more complexity. And that one job you were doing, I actually want you to do 5 different jobs all at once. And I also want you to be really good at all of these things. Yep. So are you going to take a 50% pay cut and go and do all of these things? The answer is, are you crazy? Why would you ask me to do that? But that is the reality. It's not all pina coladas on the beach. It's not all. And I think a lot of business mentors do sell businesses as like, look, I'm here and here, and I can do this and I can do this, and it's been easy, and it's just not true. But there is an element, what you said about the problems, and another problem creates another problem. And when an entrepreneur comes to me and they're like, oh my God, I'm hiring all of this, and I've got this going on, and I'm stressed, and I'm so overwhelmed, and things are complicated, I'm frustrated. I say, well, what did you expect? And you chose this. And they go, what do you mean? I was like, what you expected to grow this highly big, complex thing to be really easy. You thought hiring more people was just going to make things even more easy. You thought more capital was going to make things a hell of a lot more easy. And you just didn't manage your expectation as to what this thing was. And you chose to do this. So why not quit? And they go, what do you mean, why not quit? You should be pumping me up. And I said, no, why not quit? Why not walk away? And then when you really challenge why not quit, then within them, they start to go, no, I do fucking love the game. Well, then stop moaning. Or have a little moan, because there's nothing wrong with having a little moan, getting it off your chest, and then going back to work.
And sometimes you just need that. That's a good point, because I think a lot of times, too, with entrepreneurship, there's no one to talk to. There's no manager or lead that you can talk to. There's no one who's sitting there being like, yeah, you're doing a great job. Because you're always comparing yourself to other people. You're always comparing yourself to other successful businesses and individuals, and it's a huge mind game.
Yeah.
But I think if you love solving problems, entrepreneurship is for you.
Yeah.
Because that's all you're doing. You're just continuously solving problems.
Creativity.
It's so fun.
Yeah. It's just being creative.
That's it.
Spotting a problem, going, oh, why don't we solve it that way? And if you can see it, none of us thought to solve the problem that way. And so, you know a dragon called Dragon's Den? You know Shark Tank?
Yeah.
There's a guy called Peter Jones on there. So he's like, I don't know, maybe like the Mark Cuban of the UK. I don't know if that's a good comparison or not. I'm not too sure, but that's essentially what he does. And I went to his school when I was 16. So instead of doing exams, instead of doing coursework, you essentially come up with a business idea, you pitch for investment, you create a product, and then you try and sell the product, and then they assess you based on how you did. And it was fucking awesome. I had ADHD. I couldn't concentrate at school, so the school system wasn't really for me. But leaving school at 16 to go and do that, like, changed my life, because we was essentially studying entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial thinking, and even talked about you got to be really creative. So we went in and we went into these rooms, like these whiteboards all on the walls. Like, they painted the walls with whiteboard, like, paint.
Oh yeah, the paint. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, right, you just need to learn how to be creative. I was like, well, what do we do? It's like, right, start listening to everyone around you and start listening to their problems.
Wow.
And so I just started listening to everyone's problems. One of the problems in that college was every time that they'd change phone contract, they'd have like 50 BlackBerry handsets from the old ones that were just sitting in a box, and it felt it was wasted. So I said, hey, if I could give you, I basically calculated the value of all of that. And I said, if I could give you 50% of that value, I think it was like they had £2,000 worth of stock.
Okay.
And I said, these are all sat losing value, losing money. If I give you £1,000 for all of these, would you be happy? And the college was like, yeah, if you get us £1,000 for these, that would be great. I said, cool. Okay. Well, look, I just need the stock for a month just to clean it up and make sure it all works and whatever. And yeah, I'll give you the £1,000 if it's all correct. Little did they know, about the month I was actually selling them. Like 30% off of the market value, but still giving them their £1,000. And I was like, oh, cool. I made a profit there.
Wow.
And it was just that frame. Listen for people's problems, because that's all entrepreneurship is. What is a problem? What is a solution? And then the various different levels is, how big is that problem? And in a capitalist society, well, how do you profit from that problem? How do you create a service that creates value that's worth solving? And that one simple frame, and I wish every single school child just learned, hey, if you want to do well in life, you just got to help people and add value and solve problems and do that really, really well. Mm-hmm. Business becomes really simple. But it's just the thinking that we add around all these things we believe that we need around solving a problem, when actually when you have a very core problem, a simple problem, it's really easy. Well,
yeah, I think school, there's an intention for school to be about solving problems, but I feel like it's the complete opposite of it, because you know, whether it's a math problem or science problem or whatever it is the intention around school is here to solve problems and learn things, but it ends up just being a thing where you're just told what to do. Yeah. And over years, you lose that ability to be creative and have that critical thinking and think about, hey, here's a problem. How can I actually solve this? No one's going to come and tell me the answer. I have to figure this out myself. That is a very cool experience that you got to do that with that school.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Honestly, like, it was amazing. And I knew school wasn't for me. Like, I knew the only thing I was doing at school was selling chocolate bars and sweets.
Yeah.
I got hold of a load of cigarettes from Spain once and started selling cigarettes out of the pack, 50p each.
Wow.
But that's all I was really doing. But I was kind of just biding my time, because I was boxing in the evenings.
Right.
So I was like, right, I'm either going to be a fighter or I'm going to be in business somehow. I don't know what, but I'll be in there. But those experiences was amazing, because we learned how to pitch for investment. We learned how to come up with creative ideas. Because if you can think and create ideas, or even solve problems with creative ways, like really resourceful ways as well, not just throwing money at a problem, but actually going, well, do we need to spend that much money, or could we do it that way? It was fascinating. They even brought in somebody from John Lewis. John Lewis is like a big department store in the UK. And they were like, right, I want you to imagine you're in the jungle. And I'm like, right, okay, I'm in the jungle. Yeah, and it's pissing down with rain, and you haven't got anything. You've only got like shorts and a t-shirt, right? What could you create? A jacket. Great. What does the material need to be? Well, it needs to be waterproof. Okay. What else might you need? Well, you're probably going to need a really light jacket, because you're going to be walking around because you're lost in the jungle, but it's raining all the time. And then I had this idea. I was obsessed with it. You remember the Quest bars?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, well, you probably need some Quest bars. We'll have a little pouch for Quest bars, so we can put Quest bars in there, right? Yeah, okay, cool. What else does it need? Well, probably like some little cuffs around here so bugs don't get inside. And maybe you could make trousers. Maybe you could make a whole suit, but maybe it'll get too hot. And they were just teaching us,
oh, wow,
in that environment, what do you need to solve? And then they went, right, let's change it up. Now you're in the Arctic. Well, now we need something warm. Wow. But you're in the middle of the Arctic, so we need something light. And it was just playing with creative thinking. How do you solve these problems?
That's wild. I've never heard of that kind of schooling. That is cool.
I was so lucky. Well, to a degree, I kind of created my own luck, You had to be 18 to get on the course. I wasn't allowed because I was
Okay.
obviously 16. But I just kept calling them, and I started getting in touch with Peter, and I was like writing him letters, and I was like, come on, like it's got to be you got to let me in. And then they checked the legalities. No, legally, there's no problem. You can be on this course. So I got on the course. I kind of created my own luck to a degree.
Yeah.
But I just learned like that. It just taught me so much about entrepreneurial thinking, about solving problems. And actually, I look at entrepreneurs as they're just like fighters. Because in fighting and entrepreneurship, there's always two arguments, right? Are they artists or are they scientists?
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of the venture capitalists, some of them are real artisan. Oh, wow, that kind of feels good. We'll throw some money in there. And then you've got the other ones where they're just looking at the data. They're looking at the total addressable market. They're just number crunchers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think entrepreneurs are kind of similar. And the same with fighters. You got some fighters that are just really hard men that will just beat you up because they can. And then you got these other athletes like the Anthony Joshuas of the world where they are having their bloods done every day and they're running down a track and it's all sports science. You got Tyson Fury, just this big gypsy fella that's going to beat you up in a really intelligent way because he's a fighting man, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same sort of thing. And that's what I was learning in there was you kind of have to have a bit of both. You have to be able to look at the data and look at the numbers, but then also just this little bit of artisanal entrepreneurial flair can just change the trajectory of a company or a business or an idea. And yeah, that whole education, he was really just teaching us about entrepreneurial thinking. And a lot of what I do is helping entrepreneurs manage their emotions and get out of their own way.
And after you finished that school, did you then go on to launch your business?
No. So there was shout out to Adrian Hawkins and Gareth Hawkins. Like they basically took me in. So Adrian owned a wholesale distribution company for welding and manufacturing. Mm-hmm. So that he used to sell like all the welding torches and whatever. And he used to come along to like these meetups. So these meetups, they'd bring in local business owners to come and meet some of the young student entrepreneurs. And I really liked him. I don't know why I liked him. I just said, hey, Adrian, thanks for helping me. Like, here's a business I was working on. So that business I told you about with the phones wasn't actually the one that I pitched. The one that I pitched was it was a little bag. And back then, if you dropped your phone in the toilet, they'd break. They weren't waterproof. Yeah. So you'd put 2 silicone pouches in this bag. You put it in there, zip lock it up, and you dry it. And I was trying to make them myself, and I was finding it really difficult, and I couldn't quite figure it out. I dropped my phone in the toilet twice, and I was like, oh my God, my mum's busting my balls. I've got to solve this. And I was kind of researching, like, how does it work? And I asked my dad, because my dad worked in a factory. He still works in a factory. And he found, he's like, well, you could try this silica. And I said, what's silica? And he goes, it just keeps things dry. So whenever boxes get shipped, it dries out the boxes. So I was like, oh, okay, that could work. Tried to manufacture it myself. I couldn't. Found a supplier. You might know them. They're called iFixit.
That sounds super familiar.
So they're about, you know how iPhones, you break them, you throw them away. Right. They're like, no, it's a human right to be able to fix things and repair things. So I'm like...
Oh, they're those guys.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I'm like 16 years old. And I said, hey, I'm the managing director of KLO Distribution.
16?
Yeah.
Nice.
I would like the exclusive distribution contract to the UK. And they were like, yeah, we haven't got any UK suppliers because they were a startup as well. Yeah, fucking, why not? So I bought 50 of them, sold them all.
Wow.
Bought 100 of them all. Bought 100, sold them all. Bought 200, and there's still 50 of them, 60 of them sat in my mum's loft today. They're still there. I couldn't sell them. And I just learned I couldn't sell B2B. I could sell B2C, but I didn't know actually how do I call up a company and start selling wholesale distribution and whatever. So the business failed, but I got full marks because I come up with an idea. I delivered a really solid pitch. I actually took a product to market, sold it, generated revenue.
Wow.
And they were like, full marks. You nailed it. So then Adrian, the guy at the academy, he was so impressed. He was like, I want to give you a little interview. I was like, okay, what for? He goes, just for a job. I was like, are you hiring? And he goes, maybe. And I said, well, I failed to sell B2B. And as I understand, your whole company sells B2B, right? And he goes, yeah. And I said, okay, maybe there might be something here. I don't know. I'm either going to do that. I'm going to set my own thing up. He goes, well, just come along just for the experience. And this is before The Wolf of Wall Street come out.
Okay.
So do you know what he gave me?
A pen? No.
He said, sell me this pen.
Oh my gosh. And what'd you say?
I'm like, 17 at this point, right? And I'm like, so this was actually I'm so happy we're talking about this story. It's such a funny story. Because he goes, right, Kieran, sell me this pen. Right before Wolf of Wall Street comes out. And
wow.
I'm like, I'm like, okay, so Adrian, as I understand, you're the managing director of this company, right? He goes, yeah. I was like, what kind of people do you meet? I guess you meet quite important people. And he bristles and he's like, yeah, I meet people in government. I meet other CEOs, other directors. I meet some of the biggest companies in the world. They're my clients, they're my customers. I was like, right. So I'm guessing first impressions are really important to you. And he said, well, yeah, of course. And I'm guessing you judge a man based on many things, what he's wearing, how he shakes your hands, the pen that he has, and where he was, right? And this was like just total intuition. He had a plastic pen by here. And I said, so you can meet people and sign deals in this plastic pen. And I had a pen in my back pocket that looked slightly better than that pen. Or,
oh my gosh,
I'd like you to try this pen. And it was the cockiest, most brash little pitch ever. And I slid the pen like this. And it's a really long desk. And I went, and it landed right in front of him. And he picks up and he goes, I was like, just feel the pen, like give it a go. And he's like, yeah, it's a nice pen. And I said, Adrian, I think that pen really suits you. But given the position that you're in and how all of these important people you're meeting, it's really important that we find the right pen. And he had a company catalog on the desk. And I'm just winging this, like bit by bit. I said, if you don't like that pen, I'm so dedicated to helping you find the pen that fits like a magic wand. And I picked up his company catalog. I have over 1,000 pens. And I've got loads that I'm happy to spend the whole afternoon figuring it out until you find the one that you're going to sign off all the deals forever. He went silent. Gareth, he's like a big brother. You met Gareth. You met him on the boat. Yeah. He's like a big brother to me, Gareth. He really helped me.
Oh, wow.
He's like, kind of like, who is this guy? When I went and met him. And his wife was in the room at the time, and she's quiet, and she's the HR director. And then he goes, you're a natural. And I said, okay, great. And he goes, you're going to get a job here. And I said, doing what? And he goes, I don't know yet, but leave it with me. And yeah. And I come out of there, because when that moment of silence, I doubted myself. I was like, I think I was a little bit too cocky. Like, what have I done? Like, oh my God, like I'm like 17, right?
I'd be silent.
I'm like,
I was already silent.
Yeah, I'm like crapping my pants. I'm like, oh, I've made a terrible mistake. And then he gave me a job.
Wow.
And then so he had these virtual reality simulators. So you would put on these, like, they had a goggles options, but the main product wasn't that. The main product was like this big rectangular like square, or like it was just, I don't want to say just, because it was a really cool piece of tech. It was a screen, a touch screen desktop, and then there's a black box, and you would carry this welding tool, like a MIG welder, and it would teach you how to weld without using flames and fire and gas.
And what year is this? This is
2000. I'm gonna say, now we're showing my age. 2000 and I think 2015, maybe 2013.
Wow.
I have to triple check that.
Wow.
So it's really cool. It's really, really cool. And later on, they showed me the goggles version, and I was looking at that, and there was competitive with the goggles version. Oh my God, what's going on? But anyway, it was amazing. And the pitch to colleges and the training education centers was, kids aren't getting into welding. We're going to have a serious shortage of welders. Kids love gaming. Welding is really dangerous. We found a way to couple gaming, getting kids involved without them cutting their hands off or burning themselves or whatever. So he's like, I want you to sell that. So that was my first technology sales job. I'm 17. I said, okay. And he's like, yeah, go after all the colleges, go after all the universities or whatever. And that was my thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was kind of the next step, and that's how I got into sales. Another funny story. He actually didn't give me the original list of all the colleges and the universities. He gave me a list of all of these welding workshops. And these welding workshops, these things are like £16,500 at the time, right?
Yeah.
No one's going to buy...
Pretty crazy expensive.
No one's going to spend... like, none of these workshops were going to buy that. So I remember I sat in the reception area, which was all closed off. There was no receptionist. I was just in the reception area making these phone calls every day. I made like 100 a day, and I was being told, and welding's a very working class, gruff industry. I'm being told to fuck off. I'm being told to do one. Like, why are you calling me? I don't have any apprentices. Or get lost. You called me yesterday. What do you want? Go. Like,
wow.
And after a week of that, my soul was broken. I was like, I don't think I'm any good at this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off. And then we go up to his office, and he's like, how'd you get on? And I was like, well, I made like 400 phone calls. He's like, did you book any meetings? And I said, no. He was okay, all right. Well, you want to give it another go? And I was like, okay. So I did another week like that. And I was like, I come upstairs. He's like, how'd you get on? And I was like, I made more calls, but no meetings. And he goes, okay. You still want to come back for some more? And he goes, I said, yeah, I'll give it another go. And he goes, all right, stop. I went, what? He was like, that was actually a fake list. That actually, you knew you were never going to sell that.
No way.
I gave you that for you to practice and test your pitch, for you to get it out of the way. And I also wanted to see whether you jack in or not. So I did, and I was like, all right.
That's wild.
Yes, I didn't jack in, right? So I'm just this idiot I'm like a monkey with a phone, just making so many phone calls, thinking, I got to find a way. And then eventually I moved on to the actual, booking the meetings and actually going in and pitching and demonstrating the product. And every week, every Wednesday, I would go with a company director to go and pitch this stuff. And these deals were like, the biggest deal that I managed to pull off in the end was like well over 6 figures.
Wow.
But I've got no experience, and they're sort of teaching me on the job. So I'm like 17 years old.
17. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. I couldn't even drive. The directors, they said every Wednesday a different director is going to drive you to your meetings. So they would then like drive me along to these meetings. They'd come along with me, and then whenever I'd get stuck, whether it's on technical about welding or about product or pricing or whatever, they would always guide me. And sometimes they'd hijack the meetings a little bit just to kind of go, right, here's what you need to do next time and whatever. I sold nothing for 9 months, and I'm thinking, I'm getting fired. But Gareth, he believed in me. Wow. He stuck with me. Like Gareth, and I was saying to Gareth, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off. And he's like, just keep going, keep ticking away, And I feel like I'm about to get fired. But it turns out the way that schools and colleges bought things was they buy everything in April because of the financial year. Yep. And then if they've got budget left over, they buy things also in August. So I was just outside of that cycle. Closed over £400,000 of new business straight off the bat. And I'm now 18. I've got a really expensive watch because I always loved the watches. That was my thing. You kind of do that, you make some money, you do some stupid shit.
Of course.
And and they're offering me a company car. And obviously my salary's going up, and I'm like, okay,
incredible.
What do I do? But I was still fighting while I was doing. You can do that when you're 17, 18. You can kind of pull off a long day and then still go to the gym and fight. Can't do it anymore. But I had a choice. I was like, all right, do I box and try and fight for my country and try and go to the Olympics, or do I go into software sales? And I was like, well, I can only box once. I can sell software whenever I want. So that's when I went into boxing, spent a good amount of time there, went from a relatively nobody to top 10 in England, managed to get onto the England men's team.
Wow, nice.
Ended up with an eating disorder, tried to take my own life, anxiety, same size I am now. I was 56 kilos. I don't know what that is in pounds. But basically super light.
Yeah, that's super. Yeah.
Just like miserable, tired, and on top
you did
of that,
you did this for several years too.
I'd been boxing for up until that point. It was about 7-8 years, and then at that point, it's like another 2 years, and then I tried to set up a technology business called Make Way. So like you, I tried coding and went, oh fuck that.
Yeah.
So it was Ruby on Rails was the thing I was trying to learn.
Same one, yeah.
Yeah. Because that's meant to be the easy one, right?
It's supposed to be.
So I'm like looking at it, I'm like, okay, how do we like create this? And I give up after like, not very long at all. I was like, fuck that. That's far too difficult. I'm not bright enough. Whatever you want to put into it. I was like, that's not working. My brain doesn't compute that way. So we tried to build this app where if you're a fighter and you had a fight coming up, you'd put in your height, your weight, your body type, and how often you were training, whether you were sparring, whether you were running, whether you're doing whatever. And it'd just give you a diet plan. And it would say, eat this to make the weight in this amount of time. And it was a great little app. And I ended up, I pitched for 50 grand. I borrowed 15 grand off of one of my sponsors. My business partner, Luke, who was also my nutritionist at the time, he's now one of my best mates. He also borrowed £15,000 from his uncle. So we're £30,000 in to build this thing.
And you got 50K.
Oh, no, we didn't even get it in the end. I'll come to that in a minute. Okay. So then we're pitching for 50K, and I'm like, right, we're going to go and get this. Right, cool. And so I'm trying to fight, and I'm trying to build this business, and I'm just anxious and stressed, and I'm eating 1,400 calories a day. I'm training in the morning and in the afternoon and trying to build this thing, and it was just really messy. And in the end, it all went bang. Like energy went down, anxiety, eating disorder, didn't want to be here anymore. And my whole identity was collapsing. So then the boxing had to stop. I was like, right, I had to move on from that. That's not the path. Because then it's like, what, do you turn professional? It's a tough way to earn a living in professional boxing. I had other opportunities. I'd also proven in sales that I could sell. And then I pitched my mentor, Ron. He's been in my corner for a very long time. And I said, Ron used to be a boxer. He had worked, I don't know if you know Rackspace, a technology company, but massive managed services. He was like one of the top guys there. He'd also been in the fitness industry. He was also an Arsenal fan, and he was also a boxer. So we had lots of just natural synergy. He was like, yeah, I'll take a meeting. And he invests in technology businesses. So he's now an angel investor, and he's a management consultant. So then he's like, yeah, I'll take your meeting. Like, come and see me. So I pitched him, and within, I'm not even joking, like 30 minutes on a whiteboard. This is why your whole hypothesis is flawed.
He's doing this.
Yeah. This is why the total addressable market is just far too small. And this is why I think you need to shut this down. Here's a couple of ideas for a pivot.
Oh my gosh.
But,
crushed.
He's like, there's no way I'm giving you my child's inheritance. No way. And I come out of there and I was like, yeah, you're right. Thanks, Ron. So we come out of there and we're looking at each other, me and Luke, and we're like, I guess that's it then. That was it. That was it. Yeah, because he was right. Because the amount of actual competitive boxers back then was a hell of a lot smaller. The amount of ones that are actually actively training for a fight was so small. We wanted to charge $20 a month. So like the total addressable market was so small. One of the pivots was going into like, you know, just general health and well-being and whatever. But by that point, we're both so burnt out, and Luke had his own gym that he was really wrestling with. We just went, you know, we got to chalk this up to experience. And now I'm £15,000 in debt.
Oh wow!
Girlfriend.
You guys had already spent the money and everything.
Yeah. The money was gone. That's why we needed the money. That's why we're pitching. We need the money. So I'm now 15 grand in debt, and my auntie took me in. So I'm living on her sofa on an estate in South London, and it's just like, oh my god, this is
the
really
end of the world.
Up. Yeah, but my auntie, she's an amazing woman. She's like so maternal and loving. She just sort of nursed me back. And then I called up Ron and I said, hey Ron, remember me? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, how you getting on? Did you quit? And I went, yeah, I did. I'm fed up of being skint. Can you help me? And he goes, what do you mean? Well, I was like, what can I read? He said, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I went, okay. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, called him back like 2 days later. And he's like, oh, you read the whole book? I went, yeah. And he goes, right, what do you want now? I said, will you be my rich dad? And he goes, what? And he was like, I was like, well, in the book, it talks about financial literacy.
Yeah.
And if you come from a background that isn't financially literate, you will be financially illiterate. And I don't have, as the book calls it, a rich dad to teach me how to be financially literate. Will you help me? And he goes, you know what? It takes a lot of balls to ask that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no kidding. That's huge.
Yeah. He was like, I'll jump on a call with you once a month for free. And I said, I want to pay you. And he goes, with what? You haven't got any money. I said, I want to pay you £100 for an hour of your time every month. And he goes, why? And I said, because you know I can't afford it, so you'll take it seriously. And you know, I've got the same direct debit of £100 running today. This would have been like maybe 8 years ago. Still running today.
Wow.
Still in my corner. And he then says, right, I want you to start like cold calling for software companies. And I'm like, why? And he goes, well, you need to clear off this debt. I'm advising at Rakuten. So Rakuten, you're in e-commerce, so you know it, but they're one of the largest e-commerce companies in the world. They sponsored, not anymore, but Barcelona Football Club at the time, the Golden State Warriors. They've essentially got the Amazon of Japan. That's really, and they've got a bank over there, like crazy. He's like, yeah, I'm advising there. I want you to do cold calling and book meetings for other sales guys. And my ego was like, I'm not doing that. I've closed over 400 grand. Why do I need to do that? And he goes, because you're out on your ass, you're living on a sofa, and you got a load of debt that you need to clear off to one of your sponsors. And I went, He goes, knowing you, I think you could clear that off within 12 months, maybe even 6. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay. He goes, but you need to swallow your pride and your ego, and you're also going to learn sales at an elite level. Not at the level which you've just figured it out, but at a technology company level of what an SDR playbook looks like and what an AE playbook looks like and how you could take that forever. So I said, yeah, go on in. And I cleared off the debt within 9 months. I was then promoted back into a closing role, ended up closing some really top plans. At my peak, I was doing 263% of my quarterly target. So now I'm back in the money and I'm like, oh, I'm back, baby. And then from there, that's kind of where I went back into corporate sales and technology and software. So again, it's like boxing It's just a mental game. Entrepreneurship is just a mental game. Software sales, it's just stats. It's just data. Who puts in the most calls? Who has the right product for the right market? How can you just work the process? But then there came a point where I was so unhappy. I was just drinking every weekend, trading loads of drugs, living like the party lifestyle of close loads of deals and spend all your money and partying.
Sales.
Sales, baby. It was that. And then I realized, I enjoy really mentoring the younger guys more than I do actually closing the deals. I then had my first ever sales job where I didn't make money. And my whole identity was I can walk onto any sales floor and make money. And I'm in this team and they'd hired 20.
This is still at Rakuten?
No, new company.
Oh, okay.
So I'm now in this team and they've got like far too many BDMs, far too many SDRs. So nobody's making money other than one person out of a 20-person sales team. I couldn't wrap my head around it. But I was like, yeah, but I make money wherever I go, so I'll win here. The problem was the total addressable market was too small for the amount of salespeople that there was. Nobody's making any money. All the leads that were trickling in. It was a really toxic environment. And I was like, I don't even like this anymore. So I had enough money to not work. So I took a year out and I restudied in therapy, cognitive hypnotherapy, NLP, and performance coaching. And I started coaching all of my contacts for free. And they all started paying me. And then I just got more clients. And obviously as my experience and skills and knowledge went up, everything started to change. I started to speak at a couple of events. And then I spoke at an event here in Dubai right when it was still lockdown.
Okay.
And half of the room ended up signing up with me.
Wow.
Yeah. And all of these guys and girls were all fitness coaches making like $20,000, maybe $30,000 a month, maybe a little bit less, but in that range.
Yeah.
So half the room signed up with me. And I'm not, and I was already pretty much fully booked. Now I'm really fully booked. And then I realized, the fitness coaching industry is really insecure.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. Really anxious, really overwhelmed. They're worried about they're so stuck in their own heads and I really resonated with that as an anxious fighter, an anxious entrepreneur, an anxious salesperson that didn't feel enough and felt he had to win fights, win deals, or have a six-pack to prove oneself. So all of that was like, well, hang on. I really, really like these business owners. I really want to help them. So then I launched Total Mental Performance and hired a team. And then I started to do the performance company thing. So then it's like, right, well, that's another hire. It's another hire. There's more scale. I'm like, I'm back in entrepreneurship again. All right, here we go. And then as I've got TMP now, where it's just doing its thing and it's ticking along, I kind of realized if I want to double that, the amount of hiring, complexity, I actually looked at it and I went, maybe I don't want to turn that into a 20 coach team, and maybe I don't want this big complex thing, but I'm really happy with what it's doing in the fitness industry, and I'm going to keep it there, and I'm going to keep it doing what it's doing.
That's a huge realization. Most people, it's a business. Build.
Yeah.
Bigger. Like there's no end. That's huge to hear that.
Business bigger isn't always better.
Exactly.
And you got to really think about like what kind of impact you want to have on the world, what kind of lifestyle do you want to live. And I was starting to realize, just this, it was really the complexity that was annoying me.
Yeah.
It was really frustrating me. It was like, there's so many different things, and okay, I need to hire a manager, but if I hire a manager, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to hire a manager at the standard at which I want to coach and I want to consult at. And, when you've got more than 5 coaches, then it really, the company really does start to change at that point. And I was like, a 20-person, because that was always the thing, 20 coaches and, thousands of lives and all that. And I was just like, that's not the answer. We do a really good job with what we have. We're the market leader in what we do. We provide immense value for our clients. So why not keep it there, keep it profitable, keep it ticking along. And then and as that's all been going on, my other private clients, entrepreneurs, business owners, high net worths, people in that space were reaching out to me. And actually, a lot of the referrals were coming from my TMP clients anyway. Hey, I'm working with this guy. I don't know how to emotionally handle him. Can you sort him out? And so that's kind of just been a referral thing. A lot of TMP was a referral thing as well, but kind of that's how I landed here to go from tech to work to back into what I do. That was kind of the story.
Wow. I mean, that takes a lot of maturity to say, hey, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do. Because I think as you're saying that, it came to mind is there's so much like societal pressure that depending on the group or the environment that you're in around what success looks like. Like if you go and raise venture capital,
Oh, that's a different world.
There's a vision for what there's a very clear definition of what success is.
20x in it, 50x in it, yeah.
I mean, even if you start your own business, the idea of just like bigger, like more money, more people, whatever. Like I would say very rarely do I hear people who have a lot of clarity on, hey, this is the type of business I want to create. I've gotten it maybe to a point that I'm happy with, and I want to maintain this and just improve the overall experience. But I think it takes a lot of maturity and clarity to be able to say what you just said.
Yeah, but it's also, I've done a lot of inner work on myself. And why do I think like I think? Why do I feel like I feel? And there comes a point where it's like, well, hang on, at what cost?
Yeah.
Because unless I'm going to hire a general manager, unless I'm going to hire someone to really take on all of that stress, and because it's such a unique service, we're blending fully trained therapists with business and entrepreneurial backgrounds, and we are creating what we call total mental performance. It's quite niche. It's quite a niche skill set. So to find somebody that can do those two things just on a coaching level, and then on a company level, be able to manage the quality of service and go and scale the company, and I still need to be the face of it. I just looked at all this complexity and I realized I don't like complexity. Just like when I was boxing and trying to build a startup at the same time, it was really complex. I looked at it and I went, I really value simplicity, and I have a tendency to overcomplicate. I have a tendency to create complexity. So my biggest move is, well, how do I create more simplicity? And that's what I help a lot of entrepreneurs do, is just getting out of their own way to go, well, hang on, you want to live this life, but the path that you're on is on a completely different tangent, and that's why you're so burnt out and tired and fed up and miserable. And it doesn't always mean you have to just put the brakes on the business. It might just be you change the way in which you show up. You change the way in which you go, actually, is that the right path? Some people, you've made a number of different exits. At some point you've gone, actually, that's not going to serve me anymore. I'll just make an exit and go and rebuild life and go and do that. So
yeah. But so when you said, I like what you see when you're working with clients, so they have this idea of the life that they want.
No, they don't. Often
yeah.
they don't.
Okay,
That's the problem. And
yeah.
you see this with entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
All the time. It's like, what's your goals? I want a 5x revenue in the next 12 months.
It's so vague.
How do you want to feel?
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? How do I want to feel? Why do you want to do that? Because I've raised capital and I've got to get us from here to here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, right? And I understand, there's a commercial element where you've made that decision. You've got to go from A to B. I get it. But what's the goal behind the goal? What's the goal behind the revenue? What's the goal behind, I want to be free? How free do you feel now? Not at all. Okay, tell me more about this freedom feeling. And that's the bit where when you can start to really focus on, well, what do you actually want? Why do you want those things? And you can just start to re-engineer, well, what are you doing? Where are you going? Why do you want that?
Yeah. I mean, everything you're saying, like, I mean, what I do nowadays is very similar, but more in the financial space.
Yeah. And
everything starts, I call it, instead of like just your vision, I call it your rich and meaningful life. And it's all about, a lot of times I think when you're in the the mental performance space. I'm more right now in the personal finance and investing space. But I think, because when I first saw your site with checking out your brand and everything, I'm like, I know a lot of like life coaches and coaches and stuff like that. But when I was looking at your stuff, like this is different. This is unlike anything I necessarily had seen before. And even when I look at any personal finance stuff or investing, it's how to invest or how to create a budget, how to save your first $1,000, like very basic stuff, but nothing really addresses like why you should do this in the first place.
Yeah.
Like these are just tools. That's all they are. Like saving money, creating a budget, investing, whatever, all this stuff. It's just tools to get what. But like I said, I thought you had said most people that you work with have like an idea of their vision, but just don't know how to get there. And it's the same thing, is that people know these things are important and they're unhappy, but they have no idea what life they actually want to create. Yeah. And you can't possibly understand how to utilize any of these tools that you teach or that I teach unless you understand what you want and why you want it.
It's so simple, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Beginning with the end in mind.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, for a lot of times people talk about like create a vision board and do all this kind of stuff, and I always like to go like one step beyond that, where walk through a whole bunch of activities, like what are your money values, what's your money story, like what was the experience with your parents growing up. Like a lot of people the way I see everything is there's good in everything. Everything is positive.
Yeah.
But we have negative experiences, and that creates, maybe it's you have a bad experience with like religion or spirituality, or maybe it's health or it's food or whatever it is. So you're positive and you have negative. But it's understanding your money story, which created those limiting beliefs in your way of viewing the world and seeing things, and specifically also seeing like money and what money means to you. But then taking all of that and looking at what would a rich and meaningful life look like to you. But then the thing that I always have people do beyond that is budget that life out.
Yeah.
Like what would that life, what would it cost to live that life next month? Because most people...
It's almost never as expensive as people think, is it?
No. Oh, no, never.
Yeah.
It's never. Because, I mean, I think when you just say, hey, make a vision board, people put the photos on there, like I want this car, I want this. But when you then tell them to budget that thing out, oftentimes it's very close to what they're already earning, or if it's a bit more, fine. But that gives us so much clarity, because when you have a number, and I now know you're here, this is where you want. Now it's very simple to understand how to get there. It's very, very easy.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get you in with some of our clients at some point, because that's such a skill. Because I talk with my clients a lot about when we're not diving into the emotional content of, well, why is it capital T trauma or little t trauma? Like, why are you thinking and feeling like that? But I often get them to do the same thing. But I got a feeling you've got it on a level of depth where someone can go, I need to earn this much at this point to then get to here, to invest here and here and here and here. So we'll have to get you in with our clients at some point to
tons of fun
to do a workshop on that, because like for me, I always felt trapped as a kid in various different ways. So freedom is my highest value, and most of our listeners is very similar. Freedom is their highest value too. But I think there's like a number of different freedoms. You've got a physical freedom. Can I walk? Can I breathe? Am I healthy? Do I have enough going on? You've got a psychological freedom. So am I happy in my identity? Am I happy with who I show up? The way in which I think, the way in which I feel. So that's very much the being. And then you've got the soul, and you've got the spiritual freedom. So am I aligned with what I'm doing in the world? Am I in line with the value that I create? Am I in line with a wider consciousness, whatever that is for you? For some people that's a God, some people it's a wider universal energy, whatever. And you have financial freedom, because in the world in which we live in, you need money. If you want to if you're going to live in a capitalist society, you need money. And if you can start to achieve various different freedoms, whatever that means to the individual in those four areas, and things start to really change. And then you have a relationship freedom, and relationship might be your parents, it might be your partner, it might be your children, it might be your friends or whatever. But we are social creatures. We can't live without other human beings. A really odd thing that we have. But if you can start to look at all those areas and start playing with, what does freedom mean to me? What kind of friendships do I want? What kind of relationship do I want? Okay, I want a lifestyle. What kind of lifestyle do I want? And then budgeting out in the various different areas, whether that's, okay, well, I need to go to the gym 3 times a week in a way in which I enjoy, or I need to eat in a certain way. That's what it all comes back to. It's like, what do you want?
Yeah, having the freedom to do what you want. And because there was this guy there's this guy, like when I've always been like really big into personal finance, and just mainly because of my parents. Like they were just really bad with money, I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book.
Yeah.
I never really had a rich dad. I was more like, hey, I learned from my parents, and I'm like, I don't want that, so I'm going to learn as much as I can, do the opposite. But I remember I was in Vancouver. I was in Vancouver, and I wanted a personal trainer. I was like, okay, I want to start going to the gym a bit more seriously and get a personal trainer. But I also I love working. I love business, and I love working on business. I'm like, hey, why don't I just like throw an ad up somewhere and say, hey, I'm looking for a personal trainer. I'll help you with your business, and just train me in exchange. So I put this ad up on a thing called Craigslist. I don't know if that's in the UK or anything, but it basically a marketplace. And it was, hey, I'll help you with your business, help you scale your personal training business in exchange. You just train me. And this guy reached out, and I'm really good friends with him to this day. This random guy reaches out and says, hey, like, I'll take you up on it. So we meet up at a coffee shop, and we're sitting down and we're going over his business. And he was like, he was a life coach. He did personal training. He did a bunch of things, and he'd done really well. He was making around like I think $20,000. This is almost a decade ago. He had been making about $20,000 a month, but he had $80,000 in credit card debt. He was living on a friend's couch, totally broke. Couldn't afford his car payment, like absolute, like barely surviving. I remember we met up at Starbucks I think he offered to pay, and he was paying with a gift card that his friend had given him because he couldn't afford to buy coffee. And I was diving, and I didn't realize this in the beginning, as I was diving through his business. I'm like, your business is doing pretty good. Like, here's some stuff that we could do. But I started to learn more about his financial situation. This is when I realized, you're making, you have like all this crazy amounts of debt. And what I realized for him is a lot of these people is you can be really successful in business. You can, have nice things. You can have a really great social circle, all this like great friendships and whatever. But if you don't take care of your finances and get that in order, it spreads and limits absolutely everything. And so that's why I always say, the idea of like financial freedom is like, it's wide. Ideally, people think it's enough money to, never have to work again. And that's sure, technically. But there's a level of financial freedom that everybody should have all the time. And it's understanding where your money is, understanding that you're on a path to like true financial freedom, that you're not stressing. Yeah. You're not worrying that if you're going to be able to pay rent or pay for the car, all these things. So meeting that guy, it was interesting because he was in the fitness space as well, like you are. But that really took off the whole journey into personal finance with other people.
Yeah. And like there's a considerable shift energetically when you go from, holy shit, I'm in debt and I can't afford to pay my bills, and you're earning zero, and then earning maybe £2,000 or dollars a month. There's a big shift from that. You're like, okay, I can just about afford my food, my rent, cool. And then there's another shift from like, say, that 2 to 5 mark. You're like, oh, cool, now I can go on a holiday. Amazing. And then that 5 to 10 is a real big change. But then I think after that it really diminishes. I think it just comes down to psychological safety. It comes down to feeling safe that I can provide for myself, I can provide for others, I'm safe, and I've got that net.
Yeah. But is that level of like, you have the freedom to pretty much do, most things. You have the security. Yeah. And that's why I think once you have those two things, you have that diminishing returns on making more money.
Yeah. So tell us more about, in fact, we've actually missed a part of your story.
Okay.
We've gone off on a tangent. So you went back to Shopify. You created another startup after that. What was that?
So it started as, it was an e-commerce business. Had, I think we put $1,000 into it. So it's basically, my friend and I, we said, hey, let's just start this drop shipping store. I need to be doing something. I can't just go back to Shopify and stay here. So, we started this drop shipping store, each put in $500, and that business kind of took off. I wouldn't say took off. We made $10,000 within a few months profit. But it was drop shipping, and I'd done so much drop shipping in the past. I'm like, I am not going and doing this. I do not want to do this again. So we took the money that we made from that brand and launched another brand called Fragile Club, which was basically this apparel company that had a heavy focus around mental health. And so we did that, started making money there. And basically over the next like 16 months, we scaled out a whole bunch of different brands. We had supplements, we had digital products, we had the apparel company, had a travel and lifestyle brand. And that business, within the first 18 months, we did about 16 million in revenue, scaled up to over 20 million in revenue. And then while we were doing that, and I would say that was a huge, I could be here all day talking about the mistakes and learning experiences from that. But that was a huge, just a huge shift, because that was where we really built, it was a pretty large team. It was all remote. But I think there was always this nagging thing in the back of my head around like software, need to do software. And so
I think everybody has this dream of being a tech founder. Like, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe in the 90s and the noughties, like banking was the sexy thing. And then like I'm a tech founder became a sexy thing. Now it seems to be like either traders or crypto or, the online, like e-commerce, traveling everywhere, whatever. But like the tech founder thing, that was really alluring, the software thing too.
Yeah. And I kind of think when I look back, like with the travel and creating travel content, like there was a time when that was like really hot, right? Yeah. Everyone wanted to, I don't know, be an Instagram influencer or whatever. Like, but I never feel like I did any of these things to follow. It wasn't like a following a trend. The software, because I was just so obsessed with, I really like software. And I actually genuinely enjoy coding and programming. Like I really, really enjoy it.
Do you still do any now?
I still do it.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to have a
things,
job.
What kind of things do you play with now when you're coding?
Oh, I mean, if you go on my site now, like everything I built, like all the investment calculators, debt
I saw that.
calculators.
I was like, this is really, really nice. You put some time into this.
No,
I didn't realize you coded that.
I build. Yeah, I love building stuff. So I really love engineering. Because at the end of the day, you're just solving problems and creating things and building things. But yeah, that the idea for that the company that we started on the side was called Pop Up. That business was because me and my co-founder and my wife, we'd all worked at Shopify for years, so we'd really seen a lot of these pain points. And then when we scaled this e-commerce business up, and we had all these brands, and it was doing like millions in revenue, we realized that for us it was, how do we create conversion funnels? Like we want to create funnels that have high conversion rate. And really, we'd use a lot of ClickFunnels. ClickFunnels is one of like the things we've been using. We've been using Shopify with ClickFunnels. ClickFunnels create the funnels, and then Shopify basically the back end. And it was just a complete nightmare. And a lot of the merchants that we had worked with together at Shopify were doing this similar things. They need to do a lot of like paid advertising. They need to have all these optimized funnels and stuff. And they're really hacked solutions. So we had this idea, and we'd been toying with it because we had all these different ideas for other stuff we wanted to do, but we always kept coming back. It took us months before we said, hey, let's do this. We knew like, hey, this is going to be way harder than we think. This is gonna be really challenging. And but we just said, let's do it. Like this is the thing we keep coming back to. This seems to be a very clear problem that we've been facing. We've heard a lot. So yeah, we took $100,000 out of the business, the Viceroy Group. Took $100,000 to basically put together like a small engineering team, and started building that. And very quickly realized that $100,000 was not enough.
So. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You make these estimates. We used to have this joke. We had a shout out to Yanis. We had a co-founder from Latvia that come in on the Make Weight project, right? And we always had this joke. Hey Yanis, can you just code this one little piece of feature in? It's like a 10-second job. And it's never a 10-second job. And it's like, there's just the smallest, that shouldn't be too hard. And we'd come back a week later, guys, that one thing you want is driving my fucking head in, and it's going to take me more time, or we're going to need to hire more people. It's never, they are money pit. Technology can be a money pit.
Yeah. I would say, and I'll just be honest with, I think with Pop-Up, we approached it the wrong way. That if, looking back on it, I think we had this big vision, big idea for what it was going to be. Hey, we're going to solve all these problems, and that was the mistake.
You went wide.
It was too wide.
Yeah.
It was way too wide, and again, this is hindsight.
Yeah.
I can look at every single business and say exactly all based on hindsight. But yeah, the product from the way that we approached it was super wide, and I think the other mistake that happened is when we started it, every company I'd done in the past bootstrapped. All self-funded, all of our money. So we're like really thinking, how do we
lean,
very lean.
And you become more resourceful like that too.
Very resourceful. Like, and honestly, I love small teams. Like when you say, hey, you want to cap my team, I want to keep it here, and just like I love that. But at the time, we realized, hey, we need to go fundraise for this because I don't want to keep plowing tons of money into this thing. So we went out and fundraised. We raised $3.5 million for the company, and that was another thing too of like, hey, we need money. I have no idea what fundraising is. I have no idea how this even works, and learning what a pitch deck is, learning how to. It's just fun. It's just learning. And I think if you get into entrepreneurship, you start a business, you're just going to learn.
Every day's a school day.
Every single day. Just acknowledge that, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing, but you can figure everything out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a wild experience fundraising, but I think fundraising really changed the dynamic of
everything. Because you lose an element of control of your company, and all of a sudden, from what I hear, because I've taken loans, but I've never actually raised VC money. It's almost like you create a boss, someone that you report into. Did you have that experience, or was it, no, they just left us do us thing, I had to do the reports, or?
Yeah, so I think it depends on who you raise from. And it also depends on the stage of your business. So obviously we were really early, like consider like seed stage. Yeah, so it's kind of like, have an idea, have maybe an MVP, something really basic. From my experience, if you raise from venture capital, especially bigger firms like Excel or 20 VC, they're giving you money because they believe in you as a founder. They believe in the vision, they believe in the product, they believe in the team, and they let you they let you go off and do your thing. And that's honest. That's the kind of investors that you want. A lot of founders that I speak with who do fundraising but don't maybe go through like major venture capital firms, they'll get individual investors or maybe smaller angels that want like to be super, super involved. They're like, hey, I got an office space. You guys can come work out of here. Or
I've seen that, yeah.
And they're just emailing in, how's it going? Or they wanted to hop on calls sometime. You don't want those types of investors because they're just a huge burden. Investors are already a burden in general. Once you take money, there's someone that you're reporting to. So no, we didn't have that experience. Like we had incredible investors, really, really good. But it changes the dynamic in terms of where the company needs to go. From once you take capital, the idea of, hey, let's just like keep tinkering away and let's just build this thing and hopefully we can make some money with it and it works out.
There's expectation.
It's
now.
gone. Yeah. Now it has to become a billion dollar company. And a lot of I think there's two things. One is a lot of your attention shifts. I mean, obviously you're always focused on the product and your go to market and product market fit, but there is a shift into fund the next round.
Yeah.
Because especially in the beginning, it takes a while to get up to revenue with software, at least enough to be able to cover the kind of burn that you have in those companies. So there's that shift around the next fundraise and investor relations, which I knew nothing about, and I think that's a really big thing is how to show up and how to talk to investors and the word I would say for it is that I don't want to say perception because that can be taken a little off it, but you need to show a certain perception when it comes to investors.
Yeah. So then your whole mindset, your whole energy changes, right? Because it's one thing, like for me as a solo founder of the TMP company and KO Consulting it's just where I consult, right? I don't have anyone to answer to. Yeah. So I can say no to clients, I can say no to partnerships, I can fire clients if I want to. But then when there's an external expectation of, well, the company is go from here to here, there is when we talk about the word freedom, there's less freedom that you have to go, actually, fuck it, I'm going to burn it all down and rebuild it this way, or I'm going to go do it this way or this way, because there's money involved. And then when money gets involved, there is less freedom. But at the same time, you have more capital, which can unlock other levels of freedom, but can also create more pressure, expectation. And I've seen that, how an external check can just change everything. Even when I borrowed £15,000 off of, he's actually my first ever business mentor as well. Shout out to Steve Calvert from Hallgrove Garage.
Nice.
He lent me the money, and he was phenomenal. But even then, I was like, oh shit, like Steve's money's on the line, man. I don't want to lose this. And you could just feel that. Mm-hmm. So for you, was that something you were able to park very easily, or was that whirring away in the background when you were making decisions about how do we get this company to be the best technology in our space?
Worrying about like
expectation, or right, here are the series of targets, got to get the company from here to here to here to here.
Yeah, I think it was mixed. I think because you have one side, like we didn't have very high pressure investors, which was fantastic. They're very, very, very supportive. Like if you're able to raise from Excel or 20 VC or Seed Camp, incredible, 100%. But I think going in as a first time founder fundraising in a venture capital company, it's just a big decision you have to make in terms of the kind of business that you make. Because when you start a business, I mean, you've been doing yours for years now. Businesses take a long time. They become part of your life. And yeah, once you take money, it changes the dynamic of what the business is going to be. So regardless of if you are, if you're going to run that business for the next 10 years, you're running that type of business for the next 10 years. So I don't think there's necessarily there's no right or wrong way, but the only way you know which one you want to do is by technically experiencing them. So but I know I didn't feel any pressure. I still was able to focus on the right things, but it does change because you are reporting to somebody. It's not just you and your co-founder or you and the team.
The energy changes.
It changes. It totally changes. Yeah.
But it's funny, isn't it? Because it always comes back to beginning with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. So if you look back now, and hindsight is 2020, right? Because hindsight is so obvious, but you kind of have to pick up that scar tissue. If you look back at when you built that, does that play in line with your goals now, or does it not? Insofar as, right, this is where I'm trying to go, this is where I want to live, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to spend my time. Were you clear on that before you started building that platform? Or did you go, actually, I'm just going to do it because it's a fun thing?
Yeah. So I would say 100% that was what I wanted to do. That was my vision. That was, but that was my vision at that time in my life. When my wife and I quit our jobs and went traveling, that was what we wanted.
Yeah.
And so like the idea, I think when this is why I have this term, like your rich and meaningful life. And you can create that vision, create that idea of the life that you want to live, the life that you want to create, get like immense clarity on what that looks like, and start trying it, start experiencing things. Because sometimes they're big, right? And maybe like, you don't want to wait 10 years or 20 years for this thing to come to fruition. It might not happen. But this is why I always say, like, create that vision, create that idea of what you want, and then start experiencing these things. Because when I look back at whatever year it was, 2015, or maybe or 2018, when we went traveling, that was it. We don't want to have a house. We want to travel the world.
Yeah.
We want to create content. We want to be like this nomadic lifestyle, total freedom, flexibility, online business, whatever. Once we did it, I was like, hell no. No way in the world do I want that. But we look at that and I'm like, financially, awful. Terrible. Financially, it was like an awful decision. But I'd still be living today thinking about that.
Yeah, you'd been wasting time, energy, and bandwidth on that. Yeah.
And I think, so that's the same thing of like, when we started the e-commerce businesses at the moment, like I want to have e-com, I want to do this. It's like, that's my thing. Then it was software. So I think for me, I never want to live with regret. That is the worst thing you can possibly live with. So it's like, if there's something I want, this is what I want to experience, go experience it as fast as I possibly can, just to see if this is what I wanted or not. And it just gives you that immense clarity. You can double down and go for it, or move on to the next thing.
I totally agree. Like, even if I look at my trajectory, it's like, right, go try and fight at the Olympics. Probably not going to make it, but I'm going to give it a best go because I do have a belief I can do it. Or just sell software. No, I'm going to go and do that. And I am very at peace.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't at the time, but I look back and I'm like, I went for it. I've got. There's no, the guy at the bar, coulda, shoulda, woulda. I could have played for this team. I could have gone. I didn't. I went and disproved my hypothesis.
Yeah.
I went out and you know what? Like, Team GB was Premiership football. I was Championship football in the equivalent, right? I just wasn't at that elite level. My mind, my body, my soul just couldn't handle that. So what did you expect? But by running into this stuff and I use something called the hypothesis theory. Every single thing is just a hypothesis. And if you think about hypothesis, it's just coming up with ideas. It's like, all right, I reckon I can box the Olympics in 6 years. What do I need to do? First of all, I need to train full time. Then I need to find a nutritionist. I need to find a strength and conditioning coach. I need to win the home county title again. And then I need to win the Southern county title. And then I need to win the national title and the ABAs. And then I need to work my way through. And you just run that hypothesis. And then you get to the end of it and you go, could I do it or not? And if the answer is no, it's harder with boxing because it's like, I'm a fight. It's an identity level thing, and like, everyone knew me as the boxer, and I told everyone I was going to fight at the Olympics, and I didn't make it, so that was quite crushing. But there's no regret, and I think when you can just go and do the things that you've got an itch that you want to scratch, and it might not even be the right move. You might even look at it financially and go, "This isn't the right move," but it's an itch I've wanted to scratch my whole life. Fuck it, let's try and scratch it.
What do you think is that this? It's a huge one, and I think it's easy for me. It's easy for you. It sounds like. What stops most people though? What do you think keeps people just sitting there?
Fear of judgment, without a doubt.
Yeah.
What's my dad gonna say? What are my best mates gonna think? What's my partner gonna think of me if I go and do that? So I think it's fear of judgment. What are other people gonna think? That's the first one, and then the second one is fear of failure.
Yep.
So what if it doesn't work? Where you and I have had quite a few failures in life, it's like, build someone else. You can't really kill someone that's like, it didn't work. All right, I'll build someone else, right? But it's almost when you identify with what you do and your self-worth as a human being, that's where people get crippled. So I'm going to try and start a business, or I'm going to try and be financially free. But if I don't do that, I'm the failure. No, you weren't the failure. Your hypothesis of how you did that was the failure, but you can go and get a new hypothesis. You can find someone else to help you figure how to do that. So I think it's really those things. Fear of judgment, fear of failure. This is like a much smaller percentage of the world, fear of success, which is, well, what if I do it and I can't handle it? Which I guess is also fear of failure. Comes back into, then you would fail. So I think those are the things that stop people from really going after it. There's that. But then there, like, every now and then I have to check myself like with the level of fortune that we have, because other things that will stop you if you've grown up in a country where you can't read, you can't write, or you can't like do those things, you don't have the practical physical skills. But if you've got good health, you got access to the internet, you got somewhere to live, you've got food, you got shelter, and you have people around you. For those individuals, it's like usually mental, but there are some people that life gets in the way, and the most painful, chaotic, heartbreaking things. It doesn't mean you can't achieve, but I think there's a subsect of humanity where it's like, that's a really hard thing to come out of,
Yeah, very much, very true.
Like brain damage, for example. Like I've got fighting friends that slur their words and they enter depressions and they really struggle to speak. It's not so much you can really do with that. You can do your rehab, you can sort of do the surgeries, but there's only so far you can go. But if you've got your mental faculties and you've got access to the internet and you've got somewhere to live and you're not worrying about where do I get my next meal, and you're there, it's all up here. It's all mental,
Yeah, it makes me think. My sister, she's like a competitive athlete, and she about a year and a half ago, she was biking to the gym and got hit by a car, and broke her neck, and it was.
How is she now?
She's fine now,
Okay.
but at the time, so she was in a full neck. I think it was actually a full body brace. She couldn't move. And the idea was, after 6 months, they were going to do a spinal fusion and fuse her neck. And she was basically she was training. She is training for the Olympics right now.
Yeah.
But at the time, she was training for the Olympics, and all of this just like poof, gone. And it was really interesting because that was the first time I'd seen someone like very close to me go from this person trains like nonstop. They're going to the Olympics. They're like really, really intense to boom.
Yeah.
All wiped out. And to the not only like the Olympics are gone, totally off the table. You may never be able to ride a bike.
Yeah.
You may never be able to swim ever again in your life. And that was it's shocking. I remember like I was talking to my wife about it, and I'm like, it comes to a point when it's just like things happen, and they're out of your control. And it was really it's really challenging, like watching her go through that experience because, you have like someone who's very driven and like highly dedicated athlete, and everything's taken away from you, and you're sitting in a bed 24 hours a day. But luckily, after within a year, she actually recovered. They didn't have to fuse her neck, and she's back at it. But it's just you just don't realize how fragile everything is.
Human life can just be
Done.
taken, and we create these stories that we are like, I'm this and I'm that, and I'm strong and I'm powerful and I'm capable and do anything, and it just takes one bus out you didn't see, boom.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I do think when you kind of learn, like when you remind yourself of the fragility of life, and you kind of realize, oh my God, this could be over in any given moment. That's why I have Memento Mori tattooed on the middle of my wrist. It's like, remember you will die, because on the backdrop of death, so much of our problems become really minuscule, and it's like, hang on, what am I stressing about? I'm not even going to think about this in a week, let alone a year or a decade or at the end of my life, So I think there's two parts of the performance game, which is if everything's good and all the conditions are fine, like your health, your mental faculties, your physical faculties, and whatever, and it is just you're scared, it's one thing. But then like your sister, like when that happens, that's a completely different level of resilience to go, all right, I've got to learn how to walk again. You forget, like just being able to walk, read, write, count, like a lot of the world can't even do that yet, man. It's like
there's a few sides to it, because like you said, like you realize how fragile life is and how fragile you are, and anything can be taken away in a moment's notice. But the other side, it's like your tattoo. I mean, we're all gonna die, and but like there's that idea of it could be over tomorrow. You could get hit by a car tomorrow, and it's all over. But then there's the other side of like, well, you need to try.
Yeah.
You have to. You got to keep going. And you get in that the fear of failure and the fear of judgment that stops people, because it's someone asked me, I've actually been asked this a few times, where they're like, what is maybe like the best thing you've learned in business, the biggest thing you've learned in business. And it's kind of a weird thing, because I would say, and it's really, I think, being fortunate enough to have so many failures like early in life to not be afraid of them.
Yeah.
Because I remember like when I was running my little car wash business forever ago. I think 4 months into it, I had like no money. Business. I didn't realize what seasonal business was at the time. And when you run a car wash in a place where it's like cold and rainy and snowy, no one washes their car. And I didn't realize this. And I'm sitting there in December and it was like -5 degrees, no bookings for like the entire month. And I had to pay rent and pay for everything. And I remember having to like go to my parents and be like, hey, can I have $20 for gas? Cause I can't drive my car. And I remember I could not sleep just sitting there in like physical pain every single night. Like, how am I going to, because again, fear of judgment. Everyone's going to think I'm a failure. I suck at business. Like I'm just you're just telling yourself all these things. And like the physical pain of that was so insane. And I think, but having so many, I mean, again, it worked out. The spring came, the sun came up, everything was fine. I mean, and I more so learned about like, commercial contracts, recurring revenue and things I learned about all this stuff, but it's funny because like I look back on that, like I know that was like one of my worst moments in life where it's just physical pain, and now I look back, I'm like, man, I'm so happy that happened because I know everything's temporary. I know everything's gonna end, and so now I think when you're going through business or life or anything, and these moments happen, if it's happened so many times, you realize, you know what, this is temporary. This is gonna be over tomorrow or next week or maybe 6 months from now, whatever. But it's temporary.
And there's such a when you fail a lot, and you have failed a lot, you do learn that temporary, like this just isn't true. But I don't know about you. I've had moments in life where I'm looking at my whole. I think life is like a series of hand of cards. Mm-hmm. So the hand of cards of life gets played, and it's like, right, business is here, relationship is here, family is here, health is here, and whatever. And it's always constantly being reshuffled. But every now and then you dealt a set hand, and you're like, oh my God, fuck, do I play my way out of this? Woo! And after you've been through enough shit, I don't know about you, but I've had times where I've been so stressed looking at my hand, you have to laugh. Like, you have to actually laugh your way out of it. And you go, you know what? This is proper fucked. This is like really, really fucked. And I didn't predict this. And this isn't how I thought it would go. And actually, a couple of these cards are pretty dangerous cards. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? And you're going to break down and cry like you used to? Because failure it's a skill, learning to have that resistance to the fire. Or do you look at your cards and you go, yeah, you know what? This sucks, but I'm going to bluff my hand. So,
yeah.
But you can only do that through rubbing your own nose in it and getting it wrong.
You have to get comfortable. Like, you have to just do things. Yeah. That's it. You have to just try things and do things, and you're going to screw up tons of times, but you need to get comfortable with that. It's like a lot of people I know, I have some just people I know who are, mid-30s, late 30s, and they've been talking about doing something for 15 years now, 10 years, and they still haven't done it.
I have friends like that too, and I say, I don't believe you. And they get upset. And I'm like, what evidence have you got that you're going to make that happen?
Yeah.
What work have you put into that?
No, they haven't. No, they haven't. But they've been talking about doing it. But it's that fear of what if it doesn't work, that fear of judgment, it's all these things that stop people. Like, I don't think people have no idea what they're capable of doing. And it's unfortunate because I think it's a mix of the family they grow up in. Maybe it's the environment, the friend group. It could be the company they work for. There's lots of things. Because I think when people are put into the right environment with the right people who actually believe in them, it's a totally different person. And that's why a lot of people just completely underestimate what they're actually capable of doing.
Well, that's my whole job.
Yeah.
My whole job is listening to the story that an entrepreneur or business owner is telling themselves that's stopping them from actually enjoying the journey a bit more and achieving more in less time with less effort and actually getting out of their own way. But it's all the stories, upbringing or skills, or that actually in entrepreneurs, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have neurological disorders like Asperger's or ADHD or autism, or loads of ADHDers and loads of people that are dyslexic start businesses. But because they don't know, they assume something's wrong with them. Thus, they create this insecurity where they have to prove themselves and they try again and again and again. But when you just learn, actually, like, most business owners are like that. Most of them are stressed and anxious, and they get distracted and overwhelmed, and it's just like, chill out.
It's normal.
Okay. But it's almost like allowing yourself permission to feel certain feelings or emotions or stress. But then there comes another point, which I've noticed with entrepreneurs, is you get so good at ignoring stress, you're so much more stressed than you realize. Or you used to be at like heart attack levels of stress, and your now very unhealthy level of stress is nowhere near heart attack level of stress. That you're like, I'm fine. I used to be like that, and actually that's not healthy.
That's become the normal baseline.
Yeah. Your ability to just learn. Oh my god, I can't handle this. It's like, oh well. Who cares?
Well, especially with entrepreneurship, because I kind of like, I think I always like love I saw this diagram, like these emotions, happy, sad. And a lot of people, live like this. So especially entrepreneurship is very much just like, sweet, we got like a big sale, and like, okay, so someone just quit my company, or like we have no money for the month, whatever. You have these huge, and I always like trying to reduce that level, like, and just like more like elevate your overall state up, because if you live by the current emotion, oh man, it's exhausting.
Yeah,
you can't do it. You just burn out.
But you can't ignore them either.
No,
because there's like it's like a seesaw, right? You've got one end of the spectrum, just ignore all feeling, I'm fine, fuck it, who cares? And you got the other end is I take my feelings really seriously, and it's all evidence that I'm great, or I'm a loser, or I'm whatever. And it's learning, go, okay, I'm feeling this feeling. I don't have to take it so seriously, but I also kind of need to deal with it. Learning to process emotion, learning to understand, okay, this is what stress looks like for me. So for me, if I know I'm in the red zone, I start having dreams about work. If I start having dreams about work,
that's the red zone.
I know I'm going into the red zone now. Okay. If I start dreaming about work, I know that if I'm really craving digital stimulation, so like I always have to have music playing or always have a podcast playing in the background, I know, you've fallen into the red zone. And it's like, it's constant learning. When do you give yourself the just man up and get on with it? And then also, actually, I need to give myself some love and some compassion and refill my cup. And the more that you get experience and you become more aware, this is where I talk about achieving elite levels of performance. It's knowing there are some moments where you got to grab yourself by the scruff of the neck and go, all right, I've got to tough this one out. And there are other moments to go, actually, you know what? Working harder when I'm already in the red zone is not the answer. And when you figure out your own sort of instruction manual, man, you just enjoy the journey a lot more,
Yeah, that was a huge thing I had to learn. I think because years, the way I would push and motivate myself was basically negative self-talk. It was all negative. You're not working hard enough. If I was tired, you're not working hard enough. You suck. You're lazy. Like you can work 5 more hours today. And I realized that while it worked initially and kind of like, got me going, it created this terrible mindset later in life where it was like, it created all this, and it ended up, I believed it. It went from like, hey, I'm using this as a motivator of like, work harder, like hustle, like move, to like, you are a loser. You do suck. Like, and then I realized I had to completely reshift and rewire the way that I was thinking and speaking to myself and all of this stuff to one of actually positivity. Because I just got to this point of like, man, I just like hate myself. I hate what's going on, but I created this, and it's no one else. It's just crazy.
Like you just basically summed up where I spend a lot of my time. Because I've got 2 types of entrepreneur I really work with. One is they're in the trenches and they're overwhelmed and they're stressed, they're anxious. They're like, oh my God, I'm losing my fucking shit and I'm so anxious and they're so amped up, right? That's one end of the spectrum. And they're beating themselves up to take action. And then there's the other end where they've kind of solved it. And oh, fuck, no, what do I do now? Kind of bored. And they start to get in their own head a little bit and they start questioning the path. But that entrepreneur in the, I'm a loser, I should be working harder. That was my whole boxing career and that was my whole software sales career. It was just that. And it can generate results, but it doesn't generate fulfillment. It doesn't generate contentment, happiness. And I don't think it's a long-term sustainable fuel source. So if you look at people that are very up and down in their results, they hit a result and then they're, let's say, sales is a great example, right? I used to be, at the beginning of my career, I was this guy where I'd be like 130%, 20% of my target. And then the next month it would be like 110%, and then it'd be like 60%, and then it'd be like 180%, and then it'd be like 10%.
And that dictated.
And it was just like that, right? And it was just through me beating myself up and getting tired and stressed. And my mentor Ron sat me down. He said, "Listen, I would actually take somebody that hits 95% of their target every single month because they're consistent and I can count on them versus this bullshit that you give me. Yes, at the end of the year, I've got more money out of you, but it's a hell of a lot more stressful and energy and time consuming, and I want to make more money over 3 years. You're not a 3-year guy." And it really hurt. Wow. I was like, ouch. Thanks, Ron. But it was true. And it was just self-loathing and dark energy to force yourself into that level of performance. It's not. I don't think it's sustainable, and I don't think it's a a good way to exist on the planet.
No, well, it reminds me of like there's like the 3 traits of highly successful people, and like one of them is, you know, focus and ability to focus for long periods of time, but the other 2 are interesting. It's like crippling insecurities and superiority complex. And I find those 2 very, very interesting because, you know, if you have no insecurities and you just have a superiority complex like Ted, you're a sociopath, sure.
Yeah.
But you kind of where's the balance is understanding that balance of like having those crippling insecurities and understanding what those are, because oftentimes those are motivated. Those actually fuel you to keep going. But if you have a ton of insecurities but no superiority complex, which is, I think when I heard superiority complex for the first time, I thought like, oh, ego and like sociopath. When in reality, it's just a belief in yourself.
Yeah.
So if you have no belief in yourself with a whole bunch of crippling insecurities, it's just negative self-talk. You're just always going to struggle. So it's like understanding that balance between actually having a true belief in yourself that you do deserve this, you can make this happen, it's going to work out, but also being fueled by those insecurities that you have.
Yeah. To be better, to improve.
Yeah.
Mate, I've absolutely loved this. 2 hours of just
2 hours.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I've just flown by like that. But there'll be a lot of people in my audience that are listening. They're like, I don't know really what this Corey guy does right now, but I want to get involved. So if you could say, hey, if you're a person that is X and you need help with Y, come check me out. What would you say?
Yeah, I think if you're someone that, whether if you know what you want to do in life, you kind of have a clear idea of what your vision is, but you don't know how to get there, or if you're totally uncertain of what, and again, this goes back to like your rich and meaningful life. I help people get very clear on the rich and meaningful life, understand exactly what that life costs, and then how to achieve it through personal finance and investing. So I've worked with people who've been $250,000, $300,000 in debt, all the way up to people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year, but put together a plan on how to achieve financial freedom and a rich and meaningful life that you truly love.
Yeah. How do you do that? How does somebody get in touch? Is it they go to your website and they apply? Is it delivered via a course? Is it group training? Is it one-to-one? Like how can people get in touch?
So I do different things. Yeah, I do cohorts. We do one-on-one, and then I have self-paced courses. But everything you can find me on is coreyholmes.co.
Cool. Corey, mate, I deeply, deeply enjoyed this. I always knew there was going to be a really cool conversation to come. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Guys, if you found this episode helpful, please like, subscribe, leave us a rating. The link to Corey's website, if you want to check out his stuff, is going to be in the description below this video. So just open that up, click it in there. Corey, mate, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.